I'm just wondering today we'll be able to watch at a later time. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you on behalf of the INLUS. This is one of our first offerings in what's going to be a monthly webinar series. So we're very happy to have you join us today. I'm particularly excited about our two guests who have long experience with the Iceland Writers Retreat. And some of you may not be familiar with the annual event, but by the end of this call, that will have changed because you're going to learn about the history of the event, the co-founders, Erica Green and Eliza Reed, and how they came together to make this happen, and how it has grown and changed over the years, and maybe some new things that'll be happening this year or in 2020. And I'll let Erica talk about the dates of that and what's to come. I want to quickly mention that our guests are Erica Green, who is one of the co-founders of the Iceland Writers Retreat. Erica has lived in Iceland in the past and lived abroad extensively. And she and First Lady, Madam Eliza Reed, had this great idea one night by the sea, if you read a little bit of the history on the Iceland Writers Retreat website. We're also going to be hearing from Wilona Sloan, who's currently in Washington, D.C. And Wilona is a past participant of the Iceland Writers Retreat, and we'll hear about her experience at the retreat, how it changed her life, maybe a little bit of something she's written since then. And of course, we want to get to your questions. So again, if you have questions along the way at any time, please just type them into the Q&A function. And I'd like to start with you, Erica. If you could tell us a little bit about that night you and Eliza got talking about this and how the dream came true.
Sure. So I was living in Iceland, and Eliza and I were working together. I've been in book publishing, well, now for 25 years, but at the time, it's less than that. And we decided, I'd just gone to a writers' conference in outside of Iceland, and I came back and I saw Eliza, and I said, I just went to this fabulous writers conference, but I traveled all the way to the States to do it. And she said, oh my goodness, there should definitely be one of those here, and we should start it. And I said, well, I'll never underestimate her again, because it didn't take long before she called the next day and said, okay, we've set up a meeting. And there were 3 of us there that night, actually. And we ended up on a stormy night meeting at my house late, and it was dark. It was winter, so maybe it was 4, but it was, it felt like it had gone late into the night. And we just talked about all the things that we could do if we wanted to bring writers to Iceland and what it could be. And I mean, we just set out that stormy night, and yes, there was wine involved as well. And we came up with a gazillion ideas, and then we just got to it. Both of us are writers and editors, but we're mostly editors and project managers, so we're very good at deadlines. And she said right away, you start on the budget. I'm going to call Iceland Air and see if we can get us a meeting to get some sponsorship, and let's go. And we put together a presentation, and then we did what was really important to do in Iceland, which is we met with every single organization that had something to do with publishing and writing to get them on board. So the Publishers Union, the Writers Union, the UNESCO City of Literature, and we said, here's our idea, what do you think? And we had such overwhelming, and the Literary Festival, like, look, this is something different. And all of them said, this is terrific, we would love for you to bring this to life.
Excellent. And given the literary history of Iceland, why do you think that hadn't happened before?
So, there's a lot of things that happen in Iceland for various reasons, but the Literary Festival brings authors, but it doesn't quite work on the craft of writing. And I think that's one of the beauties of Iceland, is that it's small enough that if you have an idea and you really work hard enough, you can probably bring it to light. And I can tell you more about what the event is that we conceived now that I've sort of talked about it. Is that
yeah? Why don't we go into that, and you can tell us maybe how it's changed over the years now.
Sure. So the idea is that we bring writers from all over the world to talk about the craft of writing and do writers workshops with renowned authors. So this year we're bringing 11 authors from all over the world. Some are Icelandic. The event is of course held in English. And we run a series of small group workshops on the craft of writing. And then in between these workshops, what we do is we do literary tourism. So we, I have a friend who really wants to be a part of this. Pardon the dog. We'll just hold her. So what we do is we do literary tourism. So we go to the Golden Circle and we, stop at a waterfall and then have a speaker come and do a reading, an Icelandic speaker. Or we go to Skálholt, which was the original center of learning, and get a lecture about the history of the sagas from Einar Karlsson, who's an expert in that field and has written many books about it. So there's a lot of ways we bring contemporary Icelandic literature into the event. And then we fill our evenings with a walking tour of Reykjavik, led by the UNESCO City of Literature group. Or we have pub night, and we start it with Icelandic authors doing readings, and then an Icelandic band performing as well. And then we'll do all kinds of things like receptions and you name it. It's just a lot of fun, and we just bring together, we introduce people to the rich literary traditions of Iceland, and then we also get to work on the craft of writing. So it's this wonderful mix of literary tourism, but also working on the craft of writing.
Thank you. And Walona, where were you living? Were you in Washington, D.C. when you first heard about the Iceland Writers Retreat?
I was, and it's funny because I had been, for no particular reason, really obsessed with the idea of going. I didn't know, to Iceland in general, I didn't know a lot about Iceland, but I had this idea that I needed to be there. And I kept applying to grants to kind of fund a way to get there, but nothing ever worked out until I was hosting an event. I host writers' happy hours where we write in bars and have fun. And someone came with a stack of flyers for the retreat. And she didn't know where she had gotten them. She had actually gotten them from Erica. She didn't know that. And she handed them to me. She said, I just felt like you would know what to do with these. And so it was like, I've got to go. It just all came together about, for me, it was like February before the first retreat. And I just went ahead and signed up that week.
And what attracted you to the event?
So it was final. So what I had been looking for was a way to do maybe a writing residency in Iceland, and I couldn't find quite what I was looking for. So I was attracted to the idea of doing something literary in Iceland, but mostly I was attracted to the faculty. They were such high quality. It was the first year, so it was Joseph Boyden I was really excited about, Geraldine Brooks I was really excited about, and Susan Orlean. And so it was kind of like this combination of like Iceland travel with craft, because every year I take a writing workshop, and this was a way to do both. And I was really, really, really excited about going.
And we're going to hear a little bit more about what's happened since then. And I think you've returned to Iceland since then. And I want to say too, as a past participant myself, I went last year for the first time, and I'm a professor, so I do write in my work in a more academic way and try and do essay writing for fun. But I don't consider myself a writer per se. And one thing I appreciated about the conference is I still felt welcome, even though I wasn't someone trying to necessarily make my living on writing, but that I could use that time to hone my skills regardless of what kind of writing I was doing. And I particularly enjoyed the small group workshop aspect. So I know some other participants had said, I've been to these kinds of conferences in the past, and it would be an author addressing, 200 people in an auditorium. And what everybody really appreciated about the writers workshop is I don't think any of the sessions were over 12 people. We got one-to-one and group instruction and conversation with world-renowned authors, and it was amazing, as well as the tours. Erica, on that note, I want to ask you about something that's been added this year for maybe people who love books, but don't necessarily write them.
Yeah. So every year we try to add something a little bit new just to for the people who are returning, but also because we want to keep continuing to make this fresh and dynamic. And this year we're launching the Iceland Readers Retreat. So running concurrently with the Writers Retreat, it's a chance for avid readers to come to Iceland. And instead of participating in the workshops, they'll do all of the literary tours out in the Golden Circle and Borgafjörður, which is a different region not too far from Reykjavik. But then then they'll have a third day that will be, instead of tours, it will be sort of like a book club day. So Adam Gopnik is our featured author, which we're thrilled about. He was on faculty in years past, and he'll come back to lead the Readers Retreat, and he'll spend about 2 hours doing a lecture, and it'll be a small group, no more than 25 for this. Our workshops, you're right, Jeannie, we keep it less than 15, but it's rare to max out at 15. They're mostly smaller. So Adam Gopnik will do a lecture and a Q&A about sort of all of his work and his relation to Iceland. And then also that day we'll have a panel that's being organized by the UNESCO City of Literature to introduce people to Icelandic authors. It's a variety of authors from different genres. So we'll have Gerða Kristný, who's a poet. We'll have a short story author, we'll have a children's book author and a crime fiction author, and they'll do a panel discussion about their work and being an Icelandic author. And then the third section of that day in Reykjavik will be a bespoke sort of a private tour that we're creating with the National Museum, and it'll be literary focused.
Great. And for those of you who think Adam Gopnik, that sounds kind of familiar, longtime writer for The New Yorker, has written many, many books about travel and other things. So a great addition for that aspect. And maybe, Erica, can you give us the website for those who want to be looking up more about the event while we're talking?
Of course. So you can find us always at IcelandWritersRetreat.com. That's one word, IcelandWritersRetreat.com. The Readers Retreat, there's a little button up at the top right, but you can also, if you type in IcelandReadersRetreat.com, that will take you just directly to that page.
Great. I'm wondering, Walona, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to be at that first retreat for you, and then how you ended up maybe building more of a relationship in Iceland?
Yeah. So for me, I complimented Erica and Eliza right afterwards because I was so impressed with how well they took care of participants. I felt that they had created a sense of community, and they had created a sense of, so there were two things. There was the craft, which was really high quality instruction. It was small group. I had made a point of buying all the books to make sure that I was picking which authors I wanted to work with. And I was at a point in my own writing where I needed some very specific questions answered. And it was like my chance to have some one-on-one conversations. And so that was amazing to be able to be that close and up and personal with people that really are at the top of their game as far as craft. So that was one piece that I really appreciated. But secondly, I think when people go to writing workshops, especially, I'm an introvert, I'm shy, but I can be extroverted and not shy if I'm in the right sort of environment. And they created that environment. They created ways, I think, by having the night events, you don't stay in your room and kind of wonder, like, who should I be social with? They create that for you. They created breaks with really great coffee. I'm a coffee drinker. And great snacks, like all those little details to make the event seamless. And then the tours. So it was like you didn't miss out on your chance to do any of the tourism that you would like to do. I feel that sometimes when you go to a retreat, you're just at the retreat, you don't get to see the city, or you're just on your own writing and you don't get to meet people. But they kind of put all three things together between the travel and tourism, the community, and then the craft. And so I think that was really an amazing thing that what they organized in a very short amount of time. It was only 4 days. And I came away with so much information from my writing, new friends, and then a desire to go back to Iceland to learn more.
And what happened then? How did you get back to Iceland?
So the interesting thing was, I am African American and I am not a Scandinavian Icelandic heritage, but like I said, I really didn't know why I needed to be in Iceland, why I've been thinking about it for years and years. I didn't know why. What I found out was that it's just a place that loves literature, and that was so appealing to me. And I got that from the conference. I got that from the walking tours and from the events that we did and from meeting the president. And like you said, being sort of honored as writers and made to feel like being a writer was something really important in that space. It made me want to come back and experience more in terms of Icelandic literature and culture. And so I teach social writing workshops. And so what that means is I teach in bars or I teach in alternative spaces in ways that encourage people to use works of literature to talk about culture. And whether it's, my culture or someone else's culture, I want them to sort of respond to things and take it from their own perspective versus the traditional ways of looking at it. So with that idea, what that means for me is I was like, I know Harlem Renaissance poetry really well. And I don't know how relevant that will be to Icelandic, writers, but I think it will be a way for me to sort of test my theories about Iceland being an open and warm, welcoming community of writers. And so this is what I have to offer. And so I spoke to Eliza. I asked her, could you recommend any programs that I might ask about hosting a workshop for me? And she recommended the UNESCO City of Literature. Since they had been part of the retreat, I felt comfortable reaching out to them. She made an introduction for me. And I said, look, I would like to host this thing. It's just a way for me to, I wanted to present what I thought was really good literature and to have people respond to it. And so I said, I happen to know about the Harlem Renaissance and I happen to know a lot about Native American poetry. And so if that would be of interest to people, I could craft something with some history around it, but really I'm asking people to respond to works of art based on their own cultural experiences. And they were like, that makes sense. And so we hosted 2 events during the Literary Festival in 2015. So as part of the UNESCO City of Literature's offerings, we had a workshop and then we had a sort of drinking, networking, writing event as well. And I found it to be a really great way to learn more about Icelandic culture and Icelandic people. And everyone didn't have the same cultural experiences that I had, but they were really open to writing and putting themselves outside of their comfort zones about things that they really maybe hadn't experienced and bringing what they had experienced to it. And it was really a powerful way for me to learn more about this beautiful country.
And I think that really points to something I'd like you to bring out, Erica. I know from my attending last year, it was such a beautifully diverse crowd of writers and authors and participants from all over the world. And as you said, all the instruction, the meetings are in English. But can you tell us a little bit about who comes as a participant? And then we actually do have a question from the audience here about how does one get to come and be a participant? So if you could first maybe tell us where are people coming from and then how can you join?
So last year we had people from 22 different countries, which was thrilling. And it sort of has grown every year. We have people from Australia, from Singapore, from Bangladesh. Most of the participants are from North America, the US and Canada. And also we have participants from the UK as well as sort of the largest group, but we do 22 countries. And then I like to say we have participants that are 18 to 80 plus. So it's people who are working on their first novel, maybe people who just journal, and also people who have written 8 books. So it's the whole range from beginning writers to advanced writers. We try to be very explicit when we offer the workshops, and I'll give you a little teaser about what some of those are later. about what kind of level the workshop may be, just so you get a sense of, oh, this is for someone who's really advanced. But we're super proud of the fact that we have so many different countries and so many different ages represented. You do have to be 18. That's one of our requirements. And we have had a mother call us before to say, my daughter's coming and is it going to be okay? And she was 18 and she was great. And she did just fine. The other thing that we're proud of, I was saying we add something new every year, is one year we were able to add a scholarship. So currently, I should stop what I'm saying right now. We have a writing contest on right now, and it closes mid-December, and it's a competition. Anyone can enter, and it's 350 words about an image. You can find out about it on our website under the News About Us blog. There's a news drop down, or if you go to any of our social media. And the winner will get a free spot at the retreat. So that's something we offered one year, and that's hosted by the, it's held and sponsored by the hotel that we're working with, the Radisson. But we also offer this scholarship based on merit and need. And we get applications from all over the world. And in fact, they're all in, that's closed for the next retreat. And we're reviewing them now. Our alumni funds this scholarship. It's an incredible fundraising effort. And last year we brought somebody from Nigeria, a Native American man from Oklahoma, somebody from England, somebody from India. So we bring people from all over the world, and we're able to offer last year 2 full scholarships and 3 partial scholarships. My dog is here again. She's very excited about me talking. So that's been a great addition. And let me answer, anyone can apply to come to the Iceland Writers Retreat. It's open to all. So the thing is, it's just a first come, first served basis, and we still have spots for April for that and for the Readers Retreat. So we encourage you to check out our website. Again, it's icelandwritersretreat.com, and just find out more about the programming. And of course, I can answer any questions today, but yes, open to all.
Great. And we do have another question. Before I get to that, I'll point out the dates are April 29th to May 3rd, 2020. And very exciting news. I think this year the retreat will be held adjacent to the University of Iceland campus. So many people on the Zoom call here are probably pretty familiar with former President Vigdis and Vigdis House, which houses the all the foreign language departments at the University of Iceland, is a part of the space, and we'll have access to the campus, the National Museum, so many things right there, a great swimming pool 2 blocks behind the hotel. There's just so much to love here. One of the other questions before I throw it back over to Willona, Erica, someone asked if you can describe kind of the balance of fiction versus nonfiction. I know on your website you make clear to note that the retreat doesn't really cater to poetry, even though that's a big part of Iceland's literature history, of course, or screenwriting. But can you talk about that fiction versus nonfiction balance?
We try to really balance the workshops that are fiction versus nonfiction, and the faculty that come who have done one or both. So we have had poets and screenwriters and even genre authors come in the past, people who write romance, for example. They've all found it beneficial. It's just that the workshops themselves are not particularly focused on screenwriting or poetry, but we often have faculty who also do write poetry, for example. So this year we have Maria Semple coming, she's fiction. Gretchen Rubin, she's nonfiction. David Chiandri, he's fiction. Dan Coyce, nonfiction. So you can see, and there's 11 or 12. So we really make sure to balance it out.
Thank you. And Willona, what advice would you give to maybe a prospective participant?
So I appreciate that question because you sent that and I thought about it. I think there's 2 things that I would say. One is create a goal for what you want to learn as far as really taking the craft workshop seriously when you're signing up. So knowing what something you want to learn for your own writing that will improve it is a great goal, because you will have lots of informal opportunities to ask people questions, but those workshops are very good. They're short, but they are in depth, and you can learn something really specific. So I would say making a goal for your writing, and then making a goal for stepping outside of your comfort zone. Something that you know, whether or not it's meeting new people or trying something new or trying a new food, but making a goal of really having an experience there outside of the writing workshops. So those two things.
And do you have a favorite memory from a workshop you've attended, or something in the retreat? Maybe it was on a tour or...
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of favorite memories. I just really, really enjoyed it. And I am on the review committee for the applications, because I just really appreciate the, for the applications for the scholarship award, because I just really appreciate it, and I want more people to sort of have that experience. Two memories. I really loved the Joseph Boyden workshop, because my thing that I was struggling with the manuscript that I was working on is I had, you know, I'd sent it out to agents and I hadn't had luck, but I also didn't know how to categorize it. And I was having some trouble with my narrative voice. And so I asked him these questions, and, you know, basically he was like, let the work speak for itself. Like, don't worry about the marketing. Don't worry about the categorization. Just make it the best work that you can. And he gave me some help with my narrative voice. I think that for my comfort zone thing, it was not running back to my room every time there was a break and just sort of saying, oh, hi, I'm Walona. Who are you? And what brought you here? And just kind of telling people my story of feeling called to the island. And everyone had the same story. And it was really funny. Like, everyone sort of felt called to the island. And I made all kinds of friends. And it was really... I've kept in touch with a lot of people that I met there. I've met other alumni at other events, because Erica's very good about making sure we see every Icelandic author that comes through DC. And so it's kind of like this ongoing thing, but my comfort zone thing was just put yourself out there. I also really wanted to make sure that, because I was traveling alone, I wasn't sure how comfortable I would feel on a small island really far from home. So I said, I want to make sure that I meet the organizers. That was a goal that I had. And so I did that. Yep.
It worked out.
It worked out. They were very nice.
Just in case there's anyone joining us today who hasn't been to Iceland, but has maybe watched Trapped, which is a fabulous series, there are no murders. It's like so safe, right?
Very safe.
My theory about that, it's kind of like, I remember being a little kid and thinking horror movies were kind of fun, you know?
Right.
And I think that's because I had such a sheltered life. I didn't know fear yet. And then as you get older, you realize some things do happen. So I think Iceland's fascination with murder mysteries and that genre might be a reflection of, it's something they don't have in real life. And that's a lovely, it's easily a place you can travel alone. Absolutely. Walona, I'm wondering if you would take a moment and share a piece of your writing with us.
Okay. So one of the things that I did after attending is I became sort of obsessed with glaciers and ice. And I created this project that looked at what would happen if the glaciers melted and how would that affect cultures and people. And so I got submissions from all over the world to do this project. And so this is a reading. And it's an excerpt from an interview I did with a Norwegian ice musician called Terje Insungset. So I'll just read a little bit of it. It all started about 20 years ago when Norwegian percussionist and composer Terje Insungset was invited to compose music for a concert in a frozen waterfall in Norway. He had the idea to incorporate natural sounds such as floating water, crunching snow, and the clinking and tinkling of ice. Something special clicked for him, and he has been jamming with ice ever since. I got stuck with that idea, says Terje, who creates meditative soundscapes, Scandinavian folk music, and jazz, all with ice music. Ice instruments he sculpts himself. From live improvisations to original compositions, he has pushed and stretched the boundaries of the idea. In 2001, he recorded what he says is the first ever ice music CD, Iceman Is. He recently released a new album, Beauty of Winter, on which the upbeat single Arctic Ice Music features a collaboration with several Arctic musicians. In 2006, Terje co-founded the Ice Music Festival. Held in his hometown, Geilo, at the first full moon, the festival allows audiences to enjoy ice music concerts under the stars in a Norwegian winter. For each festival, which is held annually in February, a small group of 10 to 20 musicians from around the world collaborates to make ice music together. The original idea is that I wanted to invite lots of people to be creative without any kinds of limits, except for one rule. Everyone has to deal with snow and ice. I wanted it to be like a creative center, says Terje, where lots of people could gather together and see if we could create something fantastic that our audience doesn't expect to see or hear. The musicians just have to build their own instruments. Terje offers advice along the way, but for the most part, they must try, fail, and try again. Carving an instrument from a block of ice isn't a clear-cut process. First, Terje tests the ice. I cut some pieces and I listen to it very closely. Then I will know what kinds of instruments it will be possible to make, he says. Finding good sounding ice is the hardest work, says Terje, who explains that ice must be natural frozen ice from a lake or a river. And where does he find this resonant raw material? I have some secret places, he says. He doesn't reveal his sources. Working with ice for so many years has shown Terje who's boss. When you deal with ice, you are always reminded that nature is stronger than human beings and that you have to treat nature very gently, he says.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think you're right. You can't, yes, that's a moment of applause there. I think you're right. You can't visit a place situated so closely to the Arctic, literally on the Arctic Circle, without developing a fascination with ice and literature. And I know for me, one of the books I read shortly after that was This Cold Heaven by Gretel Ehrlich, which is actually about her time spent in Greenland. But it's a beautifully written book about how important it is to preserve the way of life for Indigenous and other people that actually make that their home. Some of us may drop in and out, but for many, many people, the Arctic is their home. And we've got a couple great questions coming up, so I want to get to that. First, one very technical one, and then one a little more visionary. We want to get some other advice from the two of you. First of all, Erica, can you just talk about how many registrants there typically are and what you're hoping for? We know the workshops themselves are pretty small. How about the conference as a whole?
Yeah, there's not one direct answer to this question, but I'll come at it different ways. So I would say about 150 people all in. Sometimes we've grown every year, and sometimes it gets to be a little larger. What we do is, and that includes all the faculty, any visiting journalists we have, and partners. We have a partner program. That's something we added 1 year. So people can bring, a partner to stay with them. And we also have volunteers and staff. There's about 10 that work the event. And so including them, we can get almost up to 200. We're only once ever all in a room at one time. What we do, and what we did also 1 year, is we shifted it so that a third of the group is out doing their tours, and the other 2/3 are in these small workshops. So that's one way we've done that.
And do you have a sense, someone was curious about kind of the ratio of people who come alone versus people who bring a partner with them?
I'd say it's just about under a third that come with a partner.
And, go ahead.
That's
Can you just describe which activities are partners allowed to join?
Almost everything except the workshops. So they can be really involved. And we're hoping too that some of the partners will say, look, I'm not a writer, my partner's a writer, but I can go to the readers retreat. So then you can really be involved. So we're hoping that partners will be attracted to that as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we added this relax and write extension. So we have 5 days of sort of all in workshops and whatnot. And then 2 days where we meet for group dinners at night. And one of the group dinners, we have an open mic night. So if you want to, you can read from your stuff. But it also gives you time during the day to sit in a cafe and write, or to go buy an Icelandic sweater or soak in the Blue Lagoon. But it's that extra time to really retreat, because we love packing it in. So we call it the Iceland Writers Retreat. You're in this gorgeous setting. But Eliza and I were like, what would we want to do if this was us? And that's why we've packed in all these different things that you can do during the day. And some people said, I just wish I could stay forever, and I had more time just to go and write and be creative on my own and inspired by Iceland. So we added this extra relax and write extension.
And that's a great idea. I know, as someone who did the retreat and then returned home to all the busyness, I wish I would have added on a week or two when I had all those ideas swirling through my head and the pieces I wanted to write. Can you, just one last logistical question, Erica, tell us, will the Readers Retreat run concurrently with the Writers Retreat? So you could have a partner in one or the other then potentially.
Yeah, and that means you also get to attend on the last morning prior to the extension, we have a Q&A panel with everybody, and everyone has gotten to know each other at that stage. And so the faculty are on the stage from the Writers Retreat, and the Readers Retreat will attend that as well. So Adam Gopnik will be on the stage that night. But that means if you're attending the Readers Retreat, you'll also get to go to pub night and perhaps a tour and the welcome dinner where the faculty read, as well as the closing Q&A with the authors. And I'll just read who they are for this year. And I don't want to make mistakes. So I have the list right next to me because it's easy to skip one by accident. So David Chiandri, Will, and when I see a great, I got their workshop titles. We haven't announced them yet, but I've got all their lists here. We're finalizing them. So if I see an interesting one, I'll mention it. David Chiandri, who's going to do a workshop about creative research. Will Ferguson, who's going to run a workshop about travel writing and the elements of fiction. Patrick Gale, he's going to do a workshop on dialogue. They each teach 2 workshops, so I'm just giving you highlights. Kristín Helga Gunnarsdóttir, so she's Icelandic. She's going to talk about the free and independent story in one of her workshops. L. Nathan John, and I saw this popped up as a question. It's what I'm reading now. He wrote Born on a Tuesday. It's a very, very heavy, deep, complicated book, and I am just overwhelmed by it. I can't put it down. That's on my nightstand right now. He's gonna do a workshop on, looks like we're working on this one, but fiction in a world that matters. Dan Coyce, who is a fantastic Slate journalist, and I just finished his book about how to be a family. He's going to write about talk about finding the unthinkable. Gretchen Rubin, she's going to talk about narrative nonfiction. Let's see, here. Ivana Psycho, she's going to talk about the art of taking notes and the experience of performing. Maria Semple, I don't know if you guys saw Where'd You Go, Bernadette, that just came out. And she used to write for Arrested Development, a very popular TV show. She's going to talk about the first 5 pages. Camila Shamsier is going to do a workshop about plot. And Elizabeth Wurtzel is going to do a workshop about writing disease. So those are all the faculty.
Great. And as you mentioned, the workshops are repeated. So if you're a participant looking at that great itinerary and you've got a tough choice to make, you can maybe fit that other one in later. I really appreciated that there were repeat. One other logistical question that came in from our viewers, someone asked, if you do the extension, will that be at the same hotel or do you move to a different location?
It is at the same hotel. We had a little bit of a hiccup last year where it wasn't able to be, but we're at a new hotel this year, which is literally next door to the Verhold House of Vigdis. And everyone can stay at the hotel, which is next to the place for the extension as well. You don't have to stay at the hotel. You can book it separately, but we have it arranged with a special deal.
Great. Let's hear a little bit about who you as writers like to read. And Erica, you did mention one thing that was on your nightstand. Walona, what about you? Who are you reading these days?
So I'm actually, I used to only read fiction, and in the last couple years, I've started reading nonfiction. So I'm reading a lot of oral histories. I pulled out what I'm reading. So I love grunge and punk music. So this is Everyone Loves Our Town. It's the oral history of grunge, and that is by Mark Yarm. And the oral history of David Bowie. I'm very much missing him. That's by Dylan Jones. So I think it's going to inspire some fiction. One of the things I've been listening to since going to Iceland 3 times is a lot of Icelandic rock music. So I feel like, I don't know, I have a story maybe set in Iceland involving music that is swimming around in my head. But that's what I'm reading.
Erica, anything else on your nightstand? I bet there's a whole stack.
There's always a whole stack. In fact, Ripples from Iceland is always on my nightstand, and it's just waiting. But I get through all of the writers for Iceland and then book clubs. I'm also doing Wallace Stegner's Crossing to Safety. I'm going back to that. I haven't read it in decades, so that's what I'm reading right now. And I just finished She Said by Jodi Kantor. So I mentioned that we're in Washington, D.C. It's a very political town. And it's all about, the Kavanaugh hearings and whatnot. So I've got my politics. Born on a Tuesday takes place in Nigeria. Dan Coyce's book, How to Be a Family, the one I just finished, takes place. He's trying to figure out, it's a fantastic read, but he is having a very typical, I think, American life. And then he wakes up one day and he says, God, my wife and I are working all the time. I feel like we're not giving enough to our family, and we're overworked and we're stressed out, and we're all running as fast as we can. And he decides, what does it mean to be a family, and how can we figure that out? And so he gets a book deal and embarks on a year-long trip with his whole family. And they go spend 3 months each in Costa Rica, New Zealand, the Netherlands, and a small city in Kansas, and tries to figure out what does it mean to be a family in each of these places. And it just brings up such wonderful questions about what is important to you and what is important to you as a family. And anyway, so global travels, nonfiction, fiction, I've kind of got it all right now.
And I'll throw a nod to someone we claim here in Minnesota. This also includes literature. Bob Dylan was born up in the Iron Range here in northern Minnesota. And if you're at all unsure about why he was nominated for and won the Nobel Prize for Literature, a book I think you'd find interesting is called Why Bob Dylan Matters.
Okay.
It was written by a Harvard classics professor who for years has taught a seminar on Bob Dylan's writing. And he's comparing the form with Ovid and some of our, the Greeks. And yeah, I find it stunning. I've been a fan of his music for a long time, and it's because of the writing. We've got a couple more questions here in the last remaining minutes. Someone, Erica, is really curious about your beagle, and they're referencing Snoopy.
Yes,
what's your dog's
I apologize for the dog. She's really, I haven't done a video webinar, I guess, while we've just been back in this house for a couple months, and I think she's just intrigued. She likes the limelight. Apparently she's not reading yet. She's just 13 months, but she is chewing. So there's that.
We all love dogs. Dogs is another reason to go to Iceland. If you haven't seen the small Icelandic sheepdogs, they're amazing. I remember getting off a tour bus at one spot where the hotel had a resident dog, and he ran circles around the bus trying to herd us all in. They're beautiful, like so many things in Iceland. One thing I'm curious about, Erica, because I'll be coming back in 2020, how many past returnees? Is this something some people kind of every year they want make it part of their calendar?
Yeah, so this will be our 7th retreat, and we've had 3 people who have come every year, but we have a handful that return. I think we have like 8 or 10 returnees already signed up. And it makes us feel good. Also, there's a perk when you return. We give you a little gift.
Ooh.
So.
And Wilona, we've heard a little bit from Erica about the political environment in Washington, D.C. as the nation's capital, of course. What's the writing environment like in D.C.?
It's a, excuse me, it's a small but active writing community. And I say small because DC is kind of small, but it's a very literary city. There's always lots of readings. There's lots of places to take workshops and engage in building your craft. And so I think it's very vibrant in that way.
Great.
On that note, can I just add, I went to an event for the Choose Literary Center, which is part of George Mason, on Saturday night. And it was hosted by a former Iceland Writers Retreat faculty member, Susan Shreve, and Dan Coyce, who's the future faculty member, was doing a reading. So that's how small it is.
It's small but mighty.
Yes.
Well, maybe we should talk some real basics, like what do you wear and what kind of gear and clothing should you bring to attend a retreat in Iceland at the end of April? I landed in a snowstorm last year, I might add.
Can I just interject? One of the things the reason I met Eliza is because she offered to create a packing list, because I literally didn't know how to pack. And so they do have advice for that.
We do include a packing list in the welcome kit, and it's a suggestion, you don't have to take. But layers, it's about layers. So we have every year had 4 seasons in one day. Sometimes it's not quite bathing suit weather unless you're in the pool, but it does, we've had sun, snow, wind, I mean, you name it, the whole thing. And one year we did have a massive snowstorm, and I was so stressed about it, and I was out on the tour that day, and they started to close the road, and the bus, the car in front of us got stuck. And I was just so stressed about it. I'm in charge of all these people. The car, we're stuck in this snowstorm. Everybody got out, pushed the car, freed it. And I apologized profusely. And we give everybody feedback forms at the end of the retreat. To a person, every single person said their favorite part of the retreat was getting stuck in the snowstorm and pushing the car out. And in fact, one woman wrote a poem about it. And you know, had it basically published. I mean, it was hilarious. And then the next day it was sunny, of course. So everything, but we do provide a list, and it's about layers, and it's about waterproof layers, especially an outer waterproof layer.
And I have to ask Wilona a question. What's the weirdest thing you ate when you were in Iceland?
So Andrew, Evans, right? Okay, Andrew Evans, he did a travel writing details workshop, and so we had to eat the fermented shark in the workshop. It was pretty bad. It was
the hotel wasn't.
I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we did it.
Like, it smelled up the whole room.
Yeah.
Icelandic.
Smelled like ammonia. But that was the weirdest thing I ate.
And Erica, you lived there for 2 years. Do you want to say a little about that experience? What was it like?
By the time I left, my preschooler spoke Icelandic, so that was pretty impressive. It was just, we've moved a lot around the world, and I have to say it's the only place I've lived where I feel like I could live there forever. I love it. I mean, it's got Reykjavik itself. I think many of you are familiar with Iceland, but it's just such a charming, small, very livable city. But it has fantastic restaurants, incredible musicians and speakers. Everybody's super well educated. You've got this gorgeous nature as a backdrop. And so you've got sort of all of that. And then there was a lovely community that I met, and they were welcoming. I mean, I was an expat and an outsider. Most of the people I met were of a mixed couple, where somebody was a foreigner and somebody was a local, so that made a difference. My dog really has a lot to say. So but I just loved Iceland. I loved it so much, and I made wonderful friends, starting with Eliza, and people I keep in touch with today. We're gonna have to pick her up. Oops, sorry.
Walona, do you have plans to return either at the time of the retreat or for a different workshop or event?
Not yet. I was just there in May or April of last year. And so I also have friends there now, and it's really nice to go back. And so I told them, I'm friends with the women at the UNESCO City of Literature program. They're very good friends. I told them, every few years I may just pop up. So we'll keep it at that.
We'll get her back someday.
Yeah.
Or her next novel is going to sell like 4 million copies, and then she'll be on faculty. We've had that. In fact, we've had people who attended. We've had people who attended, and then their novels have been published. And I think we had somebody who was a participant and then later was on faculty. We did.
I think so.
Yeah.
So your contribution to the literary field, indeed. We probably have time for one more question. While we're waiting, I'm wondering, Suna, if you can unmute yourself. And since this is an INLUS webinar for members, if you could talk a little bit as how does one become a member of INLUS and what are the benefits?
Yes, thank you. And this has been so wonderful. I've really enjoyed this hour with you guys, and thank you for making this possible. And Erica and Walona and Jeannie, you guys have been just great. Really, really fun webinar for our first one. So to become a member, super easy. Go to inlus.org, click on the membership link, and you can join as an individual member. Or if you have a business or a club that you're part of, business people can join, and you could get free blog posts and come on as a webinar, and other advertising that we can help out businesses with, and events and other activities for clubs. And so it's for everyone. You don't have to be Icelandic to join. So, Walona.
Yes,
I'm hoping you'll come and join us.
I'm listening.
And we're giving Icelandic classes online and webinars and book clubs. So I think we'll have to have you guys come back for the book club part of it at a different time. And we have a lot of really fun events planned. And I think our next webinar is Svavar Knútur, who is going to come on and sing to us and tell us his stories. And he's always a favorite for people. And Jeannie is our webinar director, and she's just done a great job. And so I just want to say thanks again to all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll echo that as well. This has been such a fun conversation to have. I'm thrilled that we can help advertise this amazing event. And I think I'll leave with telling all of you, if you haven't already, if you've been listening, go to Iceland Writers Retreat, no apostrophe, icelandwritersretreat.com. There's a wealth of information on the site. If you think of questions later, you can email them in through the website. Consider it next year or not, and untap that magic within yourself. If you've got connections to Iceland, there's a writer in you somewhere. I just know it. So, Walona, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For sharing your reading, and if you're willing to email it to us, maybe we can post that as well. If you Google Walona Sloan, you might find her piece on why she rooted for the Iceland soccer team from Iceland. Erica, thank you so much for all that you do to establish and connect, the relationships between Iceland and the U.S. are so important to all of us on the phone, and you're a big part of making that happen. Give our best to Eliza.
She apologizes.
She had a death in the family this past week and had to say goodbye to her beloved grandmother. The funeral was this weekend, so she was unable to join us. I can tell you, if you go to the retreat, she is there from morning till night. She's not dressed like a first lady. She's dressed like just one of us, and you'll get the chance to interact with her. And I'm guessing a reception at the official residence, perhaps.
We never make the promise, but It's happened every year. The thing that was wonderful is before, when we started all this, Eliza was an academic and her husband was an academic, and the former president had the Iceland Writers retreat to his home for a reception and to Bessisstaðir, and gave a lovely speech and started the precedent. So it was very nice that precedent was set prior to them becoming president and first lady. So yeah, it's been great. We've been able to carry that on. This has been wonderful. And yeah, we have, made great inroads, and we've had some fantastic faculty come, but we're always still a small and growing little business. So please do spread the word, and we'd love to have you attend.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Please come back next month. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.